Reaction to the the Chiefs versus the Reds. It finished 19-13. Yep, just 6 points in this one, meaning that the Reds got their losing bonus point, and the Chiefs missed out on that try bonus point, which it looked like they were in a good position to get at half time. But not scoring in the second half really didn't help them. Hi, I'm Paul, the guy behind DrivingMaul, your best play for predictions and opinion, and also post-match reactions as well. So we got an early taste for what was going to happen in this game. In the first 3 minutes, we had the Reds go through 15 to 19 phases, all from a line out near halfway, and then have a try disallowed for a double movement. So all that effort for absolutely for nothing really, and so the Chiefs got to clear their lines. They then had a big mistake in the backs where Naivalu caught the ball, carried it back into his own 22, and then kicked it out on the full, which also meant that the Chiefs got a line out in the 22. They ran out of ideas and then put a grubber through that didn't happen. Eventually, on a kick return, the Chiefs did get their first try of the game, spun wide to the number 8, who then carried strongly from the 22, brought down just short and just managed to scramble over. I made it 7-0 after 8 minutes. Nankivell got caught offside. I mean, generally he had a pretty good game today, carrying the ball, making line breaks, and then also defensively as well. But he got caught offside, which gave the Reds 3 points, which they kicked over. And then we had a thing that the Chiefs. The Chiefs, I mean, they're the lowest penalised team in Super Rugby, but in this game, the penalty count went against them, 13-3 from Queensland. Now, Queensland, you've got to remember, one of those was that double movement for a disallowed try in those 3 penalties, whereas the Chiefs gave up 13. So the Reds were given easy territory on a number of occasions, but errors really hurt them in this game. We had that one by Naivalu that I mentioned before, but also McDermott. His box kicking was questionable today. 2 of them at least went out on the full, which really did not help them. Nankivell had a good break after a 13 phase, or during a 13 phase move, which led to the Chiefs' second try. The prop eventually, Molly eventually went over for that one. And Marty McKenzie hit the post. So I made it 12-3 on just after the 22nd minute. And then we had the Reds again go through 17 phases, turn the ball over, and again went through multiple phases, got over the line, but again got called for a double movement. They're under advantage that time, so they kicked 3, and that closed the gap to 12-6. But on half time, the Chiefs managed to strike back. They had a couple of lineouts in the 22, and eventually managed to score out wide off one of those after one of those lineouts in the 22. And so it finished 19-6 at half time. And you've got to say, with the Queensland, the Reds had 57% possession, 54% of the territory. So they'd be slightly up on both of those, but to find themselves 19-6 behind really was pretty harsh. The second half, though, the Reds pretty much, dominated for most of this. It took them 19 phases for Tupu to smash over. That got them up to 19-13 on the 55 minute, and basically my notes ended up being 20 plus phases, but got ripped out, and the Chiefs managed a clearing kick from their 22, and then I'd have to ditto underneath it because they went through that all over again and all over again. At one stage it was 7 plus favours was 5 to the Chiefs, 9 to the Reds, and there were at least 2 more by the Reds after that. So the Reds got through at least twice as many 7 plus phase moves and just couldn't bash through and get any points. In that second half, they had 92% of the territory, 85% of the possession, it was just relentless. And we saw the Reds just do a lot of pick and goes in that second half. So if we look at some of the stats, the Chiefs got through 140 passes for 97 runs, which shows you they were spreading the ball. Compare that to the Queensland 210 passes for 193 runs. Yeah, not much difference between those, which shows you there's a lot of one-out passes or pick and goes as part of their moves. With that 193 runs, that meant defensively the Chiefs got through a lot of work. Actually, I'm just going to share my screen, which has got the stats on it. 242 tackles by the Chiefs. That is a massive amount of work. 85 tackles by Queensland. Most of those were in the first half. Interesting one down here, as I say, that 13 penalties by the Chiefs, only three by the Reds, but no cards. The lineouts, 90%, 85%, and the lineout has been a problem for the Chiefs. So it's interesting that the standard Reds exit play was actually to kick the ball and keep it in play. When you're playing against the Chiefs, who've got a misfiring lineout this season, I was a bit surprised by that. I thought they could probably have gained some benefit from there. So defenders beat the base means tackles missed, which is why you'll find it correlates exactly. So 30 missed by the Chiefs, 17 by the Reds, and yet the Reds made about a third of the tackles, and they got so yeah, the Reds tackling this tonight was not particularly good. Let's have a quick look and see who got through those big shifts of work. On the attacking side of things, as you can see here, Scott Young with 19 carries. Salikila Lotto, 16 carries. Rodder, 16 carries. You can see that's a lot of that one-out running that we saw in the second half was by those players. Higginbottom came on, 8 carries there. The front row replacement, 7-6-6. Lots of carries, lots of one-out carries by those players. In the first half, they spread it out a lot more, which is where your Campbells and Pa'aua got through their carries. But in the second half, it was much more pick and goes by those forwards. Over on the Chiefs side, and I was talking about how they spread the ball much more. Alamalo, Nakavelli, got through the most carries there. But we did see Tupu. He was very prominent for his 10 carries. He was ranging out wide, and so even though you've got things like some relatively high carries in the forwards, some of that was out wide. It wasn't all in the middle of the park. Defensively, now this is going to be kind of we're going to see these crazy numbers for the Chiefs. Matthew, the only person to get into double figures for the Reds. Checking that out, compare that to the Chiefs. Karpik, who came on in the second half about the 50th minute to replace Sam Cane, 18 tackles. Sam Cane got through 9 tackles in his first 50 minutes, and in his half hour, Karpik got through twice as many. Which shows you pretty much in that second half, the Chiefs just didn't have the ball. Swakula, 25, Boshier, 22. Boshier is one of the top tacklers in the whole competition. There's a number of tackles he's made. Sure, he missed a few. Perete, 22 tackles, 7 missed. Yeah, not particularly good there on the miss side, but he was a key player in the line-out for the Chiefs. So generally had a decent game. That's quite a lot of tackles. There's obviously quite a lot of tackles missed there. But I mean, Weber gets through 13 tackles. He's one of the larger, and Manu has been rock solid in that defence. But you can just see that all those forwards got through big shifts of work. On the discipline side, again, whilst we saw a whole bunch of penalties by the Chiefs, as you can see, they're spread out amongst all the players, getting caught at one time or another offside. Dankerville, the only one with 2 there, which isn't particularly bad. So yeah, so when it's been that spread out, it just shows you that it was the constant defending that that forced all of those penalties. Now, even in the first half, the penalty count was in the Chiefs' favour. Sorry, it wasn't the Reds' favour. The Chiefs gave up a lot more penalties, and I was thinking, have they learnt something from looking at the Chiefs? And one of the things we've talked about, so looking at the Crusaders, one of the things we've been talking about over the past couple of weeks is the fact that the Crusaders give up the most penalties, except for the Sunwolves, in the competition, and yet they're top and winning. Why? That's because they don't let people give away 5 points, and perhaps that was a bit of what was going on here with the Chiefs, as the Reds seemed to be able to make ground, but when it got into that last 5 or so metres, they just couldn't get over, and we saw, as I say, a lot of penalties given away. The game finished with them being held up over the line. Now, I think that's a poor way to finish a game. I think if you're held up over the line, you should be allowed that scrum. I don't think it should be. You should finish that. If you can kick to the corner with a penalty, I think you should have that scrum for being held up over the line as well. But there you go. That's just my personal opinion. I think it's one of the laws that they do need to change. So there you go. This was a massive defensive effort by the Chiefs. They got their points effectively in the first half. They weren't super clinical. They did leave some points out there, but they were pretty clinical in that first half. TMO was big in this one. We've talked about I've already mentioned the 2 disallowed tries for the Reds for double movement, but we also had a try disallowed for the Chiefs, which in real time looked absolutely fine, but it's only when you slow it down there was a very slight gap between the hand and the ball as he's putting it down, which meant that it got called a knock-on in the end. So I'd say that no doubt will be part of the discussion this weekend. Unfortunately, that disallowed try with the Chiefs winning, it probably won't get mentioned too much, but definitely that was one of the interesting ones. Angus Gardner was the referee for this one, and he didn't actually give out any cards. So Cornflakes Crib, a friend who does the Steve, who from that channel comes and does the Super Rugby reviews with me or for me. He on a Monday night 8 PM, so do join us for that. He's been calling him Angus Gardner because the number of cards he's been giving out, but tonight he didn't actually give out any. So interesting that there. I mean, some of these referees get these reputations that aren't necessarily fully justified. So the Reds will be extremely disappointed in this game. Just looking at those stats around the possession and territory that they had, the number of runs, the number of carries that they got through in this game, and then not to be able to turn that into points has got to be seriously disappointing from them. It ended up being just 6 points. It's just difference. Should they perhaps have gone started doing a couple of drop goals around the hour mark with still 20 minutes to go, just get some points in, close it up, and get the ball back potentially, but they didn't, and that's where that's just ifs, buts, and maybes. But drop goals really are a way of accumulating points. Way of accumulating points that we just don't see as often as I think a lot of us would like to. So thank you very much for watching. I will be back tomorrow night after the Crusaders versus the Blues game. So subscribe to the channel up there so you don't miss that. If you'd like to become a supporter of the channel, then you click down there. You can get my exclusive opinion pieces that I do for my supporters at patreon.com/DrivingMaul. This week I looked at the number of players who left post the 2015 Rugby World Cup and the number of players who got leaving post the 2019 Rugby World Cup from Super Rugby to Europe and Japan. And it's interesting to see how the different types of players are moving and positionally and also age-wise, and also the actual overall number, because there's definitely is perception that there's been mass exodus, especially from South Africa. I'm not sure that's entirely true. Then over there, the Artificial Intelligence at YouTube says there are 2 videos that you'll enjoy, so go give them a watch.